Yeah.
I got like 4 dresses and 2 pairs of sandals.
Jesus.
So my sister got the Columbus to give it to her. She liked none of it.
That sounds about right.
That's why I don't like gifts for anybody.
Yeah. Well, kids are tough too, man. I say that. I mean, again, all of this is there's like gendered expectations and things they get taught, but my wife has remarked before she always wanted a girl because, I mean, I happen to think my wife is pretty great, and I think she would have some really cool things to teach a little girl, right? We have 2 boys, and she doesn't have that opportunity. But she's told me in retrospect here, like, the past couple of years, she's like, man, it's got to be so much easier with 2 boys. Like, when she has nieces, one of them's fucking crazy. Like, in a way that's gonna really suck in a couple of years. And we don't have that. We don't. So, it's different. Also, she always makes the point it's cheaper, which is kind of what you're getting at. Shopping spree for the boys is, got you some shirts, a pair of jeans. You don't care, I don't care, we're moving on, right?
I don't know. I had that little thing about, hey, I take my money back. If I have this is my niece thing, hey, use that money.
Yeah, it's not yours anymore.
I spent $38 on a dress she didn't like. I'm like, I can go get money.
Girl stuff is more expensive too.
Yeah,
The boys' shirts, I mean, it's like $5 a piece,
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. I don't know what to tell you, man. Alright. Welcome. Now, I promised before, and if we don't need to do this, we don't need to do it. It's fine. But I want to ask. Is anyone confused at all about what you watched? Or does anybody have any questions about what you watched? Because we can answer those. Yeah.
So the trans allegory in the movie, or the whole movie is like a trans allegory?
I mean,
have you heard about that?
Well, 2 things. One, the way I was trained anyway, you almost always have to not give a shit about who made the thing. And the only reason I think, at least a lot of the time, that exists is because the people that made this movie eventually came out as trans. Like, well after the fact. And then people are like, well, they're trans now, probably the things and they... Sure. The only credence, the second thing, the only credence I will give to that is the Switch character is absolutely a trans character. I will give you that. And that's interesting. The movie as a whole, I'm just kind of like, we can get into it at some point. I mean, this is a little early for that conversation. It feels, that line of argument to me feels, I wanted a less fancy word, but myopic, which is a fancy word for like missing a lot of pretty key information, I guess.
I was about to say, I don't know that word.
I know, it comes from myopia, which is like your eyes are fucked up. But anyway. But we can talk about that at some point. I meant like plot-wise, but that's cool. I like that. Because I was worried, I mean, some of you kind of intimated you were worried too, like about just understanding what happens. Did everybody feel pretty good about, I know what I saw, I get it, I know, I get what the Matrix is, I get, like, everybody's pretty, okay, cool. All right, we'll get right into it. What I want to do today, and I hadn't thought about it till just now, this movie is really dark. We're going to do our best with what we got. Yeah, I know. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what we would do. I mean, those shitty blinds are all we got, man. Like,
I was just thinking about covering up the bottom half, never mind, that's the point to go down.
yeah, I don't know if they'll come down any further. And even if they do, again, they're kind of not great. We'll see what happens. I mean, we'll make do. It'll be what it is, ultimately. Okay, well, what I wanted to do today, this is the first day. 2 goals I have in mind. Number 1, the first day, just in all my classes that we talk about a new text, I just want to look at some specific instances from the text. I want to give you guys ideas, hopefully. I want to, as always, practice thinking about specific details, how we might talk about them, because that's what your papers are going to be, okay? Number 2, though, spring break is next week. I don't know if you're aware of that. I know. What tends to happen is you guys leave mentally. You may go somewhere, you may not, but you will leave mentally. And as a result of that, my low bar for today is I want you to have some thoughts about the movie. That's really it. If we do that, I feel like we've succeeded, because hopefully you can dredge those back up here in like a week and some change. You can go, oh yeah, I kind of had this idea. Like, so if you never take notes today, it might be a good day to take notes, type of thing. Put it out there. All right. What we're looking at, context. We're at the very end of the scene where Neo, he's not going to go to the nightclub. Then he decides to, we can talk about why that is if you want, but he decides to go with these people, right? He's at the nightclub. He's not hanging out with those people. He's off by himself. He's approached by a woman who we find out is called Trinity, okay? She tells him, you're being watched. Basically, we can help you type of thing. And that's really it. After this, the next scene is him going to be, he's going to be waking up late for work, right? That's the scene we're going to watch. I just wanted you to know where we're at in the movie. As always, we're going to watch the scene. Anything you notice that seems interesting, something somebody says, something that happens, especially in this movie, there's a lot of, I'll say like intentional metaphor, okay, in this movie. Do what? Yeah. But there's some stuff that's not as over the top as others, but sure. That's also part of the reason I taught it. But anyway, all that is to say, if you notice something that seems like there might be something else going on, there probably is. You might want to take note of that. But the next thing we're going to watch is like 4 or 5 minutes long. So I might pause it at some point. All right, real quick. We're going to watch more of this. But did anything stand out to you? Like, what's interesting to me, I wanted to start with a scene like that because I think at first blush, it doesn't seem like anything's going on, right? He shows up late for work. He gets chewed out. Some of you have experienced that, right? It happens. But especially within the larger context of the film, okay? So for instance, we'll start very generally. What's the whole deal with the Matrix anyway? Like, why do they need to be freed from it, right? Morpheus, when we meet him, is all about how it's a prison, we need to free you from this thing. Why is he talking like that? What's it about? Yeah.
Well, the whole movie is based on Plato's cave allegory.
More articles. Sure. I guess.
No, it definitely is.
Sure. That doesn't really matter.
Well, no, I'm saying that the reason.
Are you asking literally or like?
No, I mean, like, what's the struggle about? What are they struggling against?
I mean, the robots are like taking them for bioenergy,
Yeah. How do they do that?
keeping them in the Matrix.
What does that look like for these people that are in the Matrix?
They're harvesting their body heat for energy.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like real life.
Just like real life?
Just like normal.
Oh, make it look like real life.
Just make it look like normal life.
Okay, I thought for a second you were like the robots are real. Yeah, I mean what I'm getting at is for Morpheus, like now we're getting ahead of ourselves. I thought this would be easier. I hadn't considered all the garbage we'd have to wade through that's been written about the movie. Okay. I gotta come at this a different way. Who gives a shit if you're in the Matrix? Like the one guy who betrays them, who wants to go back in? Why does he want to do that? I thought we all wanted out of the Matrix. Why does Neo want out of the Matrix? Why did Trinity want out? Why does Morpheus apparently want out?
Because it's not real.
Seems pretty real when you're in there.
That's the whole point of it, is it's meant to seem real.
That's not the point of it. That's how it works. That's not the point.
Well, the point is that it's meant to seem real so that you don't want to be out of it. Because as soon as you leave, they lose
Sure. So as soon as you leave, as soon as you're free, to say that you're free, that implies what? What are you when you're in the Matrix, other than a battery?
You're shielded from the truth. You don't know what is.
Yeah, but we're talking about freedom. What are you when you're in it?
You're in a prison.
You're under somebody else's control,
Yeah.
right? Okay. So much of this movie is about authority. Who tells you what to do and when? Okay? That's why I like starting with this scene. A couple things that stand out to me, for instance. Well, I'll say one, and then I want to hear from you guys. He keeps calling Neo Mr. Anderson. Who else calls him Mr. Anderson?
Mr. Smith.
Fucking
Or
agent.
Smith, yeah.
Fucking agent calls him Mr. Anderson. Famously. Because he has that like Scottish accent. Mr. Anderson. I can't do it. But
Even
like,
the pronunciation of it, like
Yeah.
the voice of the two characters is very similar.
I know. It feels intentional. I don't know. That could be read, but yeah. Why is he calling him Mr. Anderson? How might we start to read that? Especially when a guy like Agent Smith, that's what he refers to him as well, right? Here in a minute, when they catch him, right, and they're interrogating him, and that horror show takes place, he calls him Mr. Anderson the whole time. Later on, when he comes back to like fight him, they're like whooping each other's ass, and he still calls him Mr. Anderson, right? Could throw in like a Keith or whatever his first name is, right? There's no. Why do that?
Is it like a taunt? Like, hey, this is the name we gave you.
Maybe.
Your name's not here. This is our name for you.
Well, no, so that's it. Because I hadn't considered that angle, but I like that. So Neo is his name that he gave himself. That also makes sense with why Trinity would go by Trinity and not like Megan, right? Really, you know what I mean? Those are their internet handles. Like in those 90s chat rooms, I just, the whole time I was watching the opening of this movie, he's like supposed to be the super hacker.
Oh, I wrote about that.
And he's in front of a monitor that's as big as his head. I was like, oh, you guys must be laughing to yourselves. But yeah, those are their internet handles. Those are their chat room names that they decided. It's about agency, control over yourself. If you name yourself, that's a modicum of power, right, over yourself. But yeah, the agent's Mr. Anderson. What else is it when you call somebody Mr.? When do you normally do that?
Formally.
Good. So we're not just pointing to the fact that, as Daniel pointed out, maybe there's some element of, maybe you could call it a taunt, but at the very least, an acknowledgement of the name we gave you, right? But also acknowledging formality. Like the idea of formality at all implies a chain of command, implies a hierarchy. If there are moments you need to be formal, that means there are people, there are places that are above you, right? In that chain. Mr. Anderson does all of that. The agent does it, but also this guy does it. That's disappeared now, which is not helpful to me. It's all about authority. Who's in control? Okay. Did you guys notice anything else at all from this quick scene we watched stand out to you? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I've never seen the movie before. But
Sure.
Like through this scene, I kind of like noticed that there's a big emphasis on like choice, kind of in this movie.
Okay.
Because like he's like, you have the choice to do this or that, and Marcus is like, the red pill or the blue pill.
I have something to say about that, but we can't say it actually until we're going to watch that scene. But yeah, they're super concerned with choice. Not least of which because what we just talked about with Mr. Anderson, right? If you have choice, then you have control, right? That's kind of, you have some power over yourself if you have real decision-making power, right? I'm not sure if it works quite like that, but absolutely, they're thinking about choice in this movie. In this scene, though, we probably have time to rewatch it real quick. It's short enough. I want you to think about how this guy talks to Neo. We're talking about choice. Does he really give him a choice there?
No, he's not really letting him talk.
First of all, it's not a conversation, right? Yeah, it's a one-way street right up until the end, which is interesting.
Well, I think kind of a ploy of the whole movie, because the whole movie is about false choice in a sense.
Yeah.
Because,
Use this scene to do it if you could.
okay.
Just because this is one we just watched.
Well, in the two choices, you know, you
Yeah.
either leave the company or you're at your desk. Like, you obviously can't choose to leave.
That's not a choice.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
you have to keep this job.
Like show up or get fired. Like who's gonna be like, you know what, you're right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's like a rhetorical question, basically.
Good. And what's interesting too, I like that you phrase it that way. Most of the statements he makes before that choice bit could be phrased as rhetorical questions, but it's even stronger, they're directives. He says things like, you think the rules don't apply to you. You could almost hear that as a question, like you think the rules don't apply to you, right? That's a rhetorical question. He goes harder in the paint. It's a statement. You think the rules don't apply to you. It's like, how do you know what I think? I'm telling you what you think. See what I'm saying? This is authority in metacortex. Capital A authority, telling you what you think, telling you how the world works around you, giving you a false choice. Absolutely. And again, the reason I like this scene so much, it's quick, first of all, but also it feels really innocuous in the film. No one's flipping, no one's moving in slow motion. But it's absolutely the conflict throughout the film. Neo does not like authority at all. None of the people on the ship do. Okay. One other thing, I'm kind of curious if you guys have thoughts about it. Did anybody notice anything else in this scene? Yeah.
Okay, so the opening of the scene when it's through like a blurred glass and he's looking out the glass.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like that says something about, you know, he's trapped and something else is observing him. Maybe we don't know it. At this point, we don't know what it is, but later you find out.
Oh, I mean, maybe. I always want arguments to skew toward, like, why would we care? I mean, you're talking about, like that's an argument within the movie rather than without. I mean, sure. But you're talking about the window washers.
No, I'm talking about like the very beginning of the opening scene before you even know the window washers are there.
Yeah.
It's just like a blurry scene with
Yeah.
Leo looking out the window.
Okay. But then when they bloop.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, what I wonder too is, because we keep seeing the window washers, and Neo keeps seeing them too.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's got to be another one of those damn intentional metaphors where it's like he can see clearly now, like you know what I mean?
He took his Allegra,
Because he did what?
his like Claritin or Allegra or whatever that.
Okay.
I mean, that's where they say you can see clearly now.
Sure. Well, in this case, it's what Trinity told him, but sure. He took his intellectual Allegra. He can start seeing through the bullshit, right? I guess. All right, that's enough of that. Let's watch the rest. This is the part, he's in his cubicle now, and things are about to get really real. Let's stop it right here. Describe for me what must be his workday. What's boring about it? Describe it for me. Cubicles suck. I work in one. It's not the best. I mean, it's not outdated for then, but okay. No, but you can do better than that. What stands out to you from this still?
The absence of color.
Yeah. A little more specific, but that's good. Talk to me about his computer.
Oh, boy.
It's not even on.
It's not on. It's not on. He's just sitting there. And you probably can't see this, but these just say city phone. Back in the day we had a thing called phone books, but these are like purposefully generic. City phone. What city? I don't know. A city. This is about the erasure of identity, right? We don't know where he is. He's not even actively doing anything. He's just... I was about to give you a big argument, but I'd rather you guys arrive at it.
There's nothing personal about it either.
Good.
Like he's got not even like a personalized coffee cup or something like that. There's
Yeah.
literally nothing that can tell you anything about Neo on
And again, I highlighted this for you guys. What was the name of the company? Metacortex, hive mind. This is what it looks like maybe when you're in a hive mind under the heel of authority, right? How do people control you? Well, they erase your individuality. You don't get to be Neo. You have to be Mr. Anderson, right? Now, the flip way to read this maybe is the only middle finger he can give that guy for that chewing out is to just go to his desk and do fuck all, I guess. That's pretty petulant, like in terms of protest. But anyway, all right. So again, I kind of started it last time actually. I was curious, what stands out to you guys here? Anything, especially given the conversation we were having a minute ago?
More false choice.
Where?
The only two options are you're root or out in custody. Which you would think that going out in custody is not the right option,
But it turns out.
He doesn't know why they're doing
Do what now?
it. I said, he doesn't even know why they're looking for him yet. and he's-
Yeah, I mean, it nothing good. But yeah, well, what's interesting about that though, so his boss in the previous scene gives him a false choice, and it's pretty clear his boss knows that, right? I don't know if that's the case here. We can't know for certain, I suppose, but it seems to me reasonable that Morpheus thinks he can get to the scaffold, and he will, right? Because he wants him to get out.
I think it's the opposite. I
Do
think
you?
Morpheus knows he's going to be caught.
I don't know about that.
Well, I mean, he knew everything else. He knew to bring him the FedEx.
Because he knows where everything is because they use, like, they get all the plans and all that BS, right?
Right.
But what I'm saying is, because we know Morpheus's primary motivation is to get him out of there, like, completely out. What you would be arguing for is possible, but what it would mean is Morpheus knows enough to know somehow that if he gets caught here by the agents, that will set everything else in motion to the point where they can actually get him out. And that's a big maybe. Like, because like, it's Occam's razor at some point if we want to evoke like philosophical maxims. The easier thing to prove to me would be Morpheus knows if he can get him out here, he can get him out completely. And part of it is you have to take him at his word, but if you take him at his word that he doesn't know what they will do when they get Neo, which when we find out what it is pretty damn horrific. I don't know, man. I mean, I'm of a mind to say that what you're saying is possible.
Well, I think that, so in this moment,
Yeah.
there's no possible way for him to take Morpheus for his word. There's no way.
Sure.
Because he's just a figure that he has no idea who he is.
Well, he looks up to him. He's been looking for him, apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But once he sees what the agents want with him, and he sees Morpheus
True.
as a protector,
True.
then he can trust Morpheus.
Yeah. I mean, all I'm saying is Morpheus, we might be giving Morpheus a little too much credit to think that he would know that would happen.
Okay.
Right? Because he even says later something to the effect of, if they'd known who you were, they would have killed you.
Gotcha.
Right? It's hard to say. I lean more toward the idea that, because this is interesting too in a different way. If he unintentionally gives him a false choice, that's interesting too. That's still thinking about authority, but now it's very different. You would think Morpheus is the authority here, but again, think about what Neo says. He says, "I can't do this." While we're talking about choice, he recognizes that it's a false choice, I would argue, before Morpheus does. That points to a higher authority. That points to, I mean, what's he really bending to? He's bending to the Matrix, right? On his way out the window, by the way, very common thoughts to have. He's like, shit, I'm gonna die, is what he's saying to himself. Like, he's worried about heights. And again, we understand later this is all virtual. Although, again, I think, if you die in the Matrix, you die, so he would die. But this is saying, like, to me, if I'm thinking about this part in a paper, I'm thinking still about false choice, still about authority, but now it's not always cut and dried in a given scene. Now Morpheus, for all of his knowledge, isn't in control either, because this isn't his system. This is the robot's system. He's just invading it and trying to, But yours is certainly possible. It's definitely possible here in a second, but we're not there yet. Anything else you guys noticed in the scene?
Neo accepts that he is nothing. Or in a sense, he understands that.
Yeah, his weird thoughts that he has on the way out the window, and he says them out loud for our benefit. Because especially if you watch the scene a couple times, you're like, why is he talking to himself? But that's for us, so we can hear his thoughts. He says, why is this happening to me? I'm nothing. I didn't do anything.
I'm nobody.
I'm a nobody. Thank you. Yeah? Well, and again, what is he bemoaning? Obviously, he's bemoaning his current situation. But he's bemoaning the fact that he's been put into it, right? People are after me. Authorities are after me. What did I do? I'm nobody. I'm not worth their time, right? I wonder if that's like one of the last vestiges of the powerless. Like, I'll put that in a less fancy way. I wonder if that's like one of the last places the truly powerless can go, is to lean on their powerlessness, right? You shouldn't want anything to do with me. I'm so small. I can't affect you, so you should, right? Then, of course, Morpheus would argue he's much more than he realizes, and you find that out later too, because he fucking flies and shit. It's like ridiculous, but good. Anything else? Yeah, go ahead.
You keep bringing up authority. I think it's interesting that the authority in this sense is kind of faceless. I mean, there's obviously a face to it, but they all look exactly the
They
same.
intentionally, yeah. And even, there's two weird things in this movie, and I kind of know what to do with some of them, but I want to point them out to you. The one that you're raising right now, sunglasses. There is a weird thing in this movie with sunglasses. Everybody wears them. Now, I get why the agents do. They're supposed to be faceless, basically, right? All look the same. Got it. The good guys do it too. All of them. All of them wear way too much leather, and it's black, except for Switch, which, is interesting. And they all wear the sunglasses, even at night, even indoors. And that, to me, I guess, is about being faceless too, maybe? I'm not sure what to do with the fact that the good guys wear them. Yes.
I mean, in a sense, you could say that maybe they're martyrs and they don't want their identity shown, but I don't really see how that would help them in a system like this.
Yeah, well, I mean, on the one hand, they all announce what group they're in, because the agents don't just wear the big gut, but they have the suit too, so that you know it's an agent when you see one, because they look like one.
Or maybe it's for conformity, so that they all feel as though they're part of the group.
Well, that's what I'm saying too. Like, so it's interesting. When a Matrix person is running around, because they look like they're in like a mid-90s hip-hop video, right? Like they're dressed like that. And again, it's a little bit of a cliche idea, but they don't conform to the capital A authority, but in order to do that, they have to conform to like their own group's authority. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's an argument here about rules and how they work and whether or not you can actually escape them. Go ahead.
So I noticed that too, but I just called it like techie wear kind of.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, they look like super hackers.
Yeah, I think they do that because like they are basically like hackers.
They are.
In the movie.
Yeah.
And that's just like when you think of a hacker, aside from like a fat dude, like at his computer.
When you think of movie hackers.
When you think of movie hackers, you
Yeah.
think of the dude, the duster.
Yeah.
The sunglasses,
A lot of those.
the shades.
And to be fair, I think the guys that made the movie probably chose it too because it highlights all the flippy stuff better, when you have long flowy. But still, the fact that they all look the same, considering what we've been talking about thus far, is pretty interesting. The other thing I want to highlight for you, a lot of phones. And again, part of it is due to the nature of their hobby. They are hackers. I don't know if you know this, the internet operates on like phone lines, like classically speaking, that's how it works. You need phones to make that happen.
I think it's something else.
Sure, go ahead.
Well, that's how they get out of the matrix, is through phone.
Yeah,
I think maybe this is like a show of something to come later, that you'll realize how important phones are in the universe at a later date.
are you saying in this scene?
Yeah, in this.
No, for sure. But I'm also saying, again, outside the film, like what any of this might have to do with us. Here at the end of the 90s, most people didn't know a whole lot about the internet. We knew that it was pretty cool, and we knew that it needed phones. Legit, that's all we knew. Like if this came out, I was 13. If somebody called my house when this movie came out, if I was online, I was not online anymore because it would kick me off. Because it was through the phone line. That's how it works. If I was playing Diablo 1, by the way, and I get kicked off, I'm like, fuck, somebody's calling. That's exactly what would happen every time. Mom, you're about to get a phone call or something, and then But what the point I'm making with a stupid joke is there's power in those phones. There's power in the internet. So much of this movie is like the magic of it. And I don't mean movie magic. I mean like they basically cast spells at each other. Is technology magic, internet magic. So much of it is in 1999. Hey, you know that thing you barely understand? Think about what it could do years from now. It can control you. It's magic. And I bring that up because what is Neo really? You said he's a hacker. They're all hackers. That's what they are. We have another word for those kinds of people. I'll put it to you this way. Neo is not an action hero. Fair? Definitely not. Especially, even Bruce Willis in Die Hard. He's an everyman, but he's an everyman that like does pull-ups and stuff. You know what I'm saying? Neo does not do pull-ups. Neo's a nerd. He's a nerd. He's up all night as he falls asleep at his computer.
He sells floppy disks.
He's a nerd.
You could even argue that maybe he's not a good guy.
Well,
It's like, what does he do with his hacking? Like,
yeah. Well, he's apparently trying to unravel this mystery, is what we're led to believe. But
like if he's out there stealing people's identities and selling their money or something. Or their
yeah, I'm still not clear what he sells.
Yeah.
I think it's like
It was-
software.
No, it was like a disc.
Yeah.
It showed that.
But I assume it's software. It's called a MacGuffin. It's intentionally like left unknown. Its only function is plot. Its only function is like, this is a cool thing that I have access to. It's like another discussion. My point is, he's a nerd who we find out gets superpowers through the internet. That's what happens in a really simplistic way. But it's interesting to me here in 1999 that we make a movie where the main character is a nerd who gets superpowers through the internet.
It's that the internet is the future.
Sure.
I mean, it's the turn of the millennium. This new invention that no one understands is eventually going to take over the world.
Sure. But like the point, like, because I want to draw a parallel to, real quick, like Rocky, we talked a lot about that movie. It's about the American dream, especially for a guy like from lesser means, what he's capable of versus like how he measures himself, like all that stuff, right? That's a 70s movie. 80s movie is Die Hard. It's not completely realistic, but he's also not Arnold Schwarzenegger, so it's like, it's somewhere in between. He needs help by the end, so he's not all in it on his own, type of thing. That's 80s. Here at the end of the 90s, we got a guy who falls asleep at his computer, sits in a cubicle all day, and by the end, he's actually flying. How does he do it? Does he work out? Does he put in the time? I mean, virtually. In video games. We have real weird ideas in the 90s about how we're going to better ourselves. I just want you thinking about that. Okay. The next scene, we actually got to skip ahead a little bit. What time is it, by the way?
412.
Oh, okay. All right. Oh, hell. Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. The last thing, I wanted to give you this language. This is what's known as a power fantasy.
Oh yeah, I have that written down.
Good. You're going to see stuff about that. I want to say the article actually I assigned for you guys for when we get back might specifically be about that. It's this idea, and there's different kinds, but it's this idea that like the superhero is in you all along, sort of thing. All this language about how he's the chosen one, he's the one, the idea is that you could be that too. You could have it in you, right? And again, if that's the case, if that's what we're telling ourselves as a society, we're all the chosen one. What? By definition, that doesn't work. It's one. One dude. It's like, nah, but it could be you. How do I make sure it's me? You don't do a damn thing. You just keep playing video games. It's gonna happen, bro. Anyway, all right. Yeah, go ahead.
Isn't that Trinity on the motorcycle?
It is.
So wouldn't that prove maybe that Morpheus knew he would be caught since she's stationed there ready to follow them whenever?
You could just as easily argue she's there to pick him up off the roof and she just gets downstairs.
Okay, I guess.
So we can't know. We
Yeah.
can't know what Morpheus knows here. We
Right.
can't. Yeah, what's up?
If there, couldn't she just like hack her motorcycle to be on top of the roof when he gets there? Like
What?
she's a hacker. Like couldn't she just do some stupid stuff like that?
No, I'm saying like you could easily argue she was waiting on him like where he was supposed to get to. But once the agents get him, and we learn later, she definitely can't fuck with 3 of those guys. Like that's not. They would just all be dead. Like it wouldn't matter. Anyway, okay, where were we? 2133. This we're gonna meet. Oh Jesus! All right, so we got to come right at the end of the nightmare scene where they bug him, literally. Yeah. Anyway, the scene we're gonna watch is not this one. The scene right after this, he decides he's gonna meet those people. Not least of which because he's been through some things, right? He's gonna meet with these people and find out what the Matrix is, basically. Okay. We've been talking about it already, so let's go ahead and do this first. The choice he gets in this scene. Our way or the highway, she says. Is that a real choice?
I mean, yes, but there's only one right answer.
Yeah. Well, especially, go ahead.
A real choice. That, you know, like he could have left, but that would have been the wrong choice.
Yeah, well, especially when Trinity sort of reminds him of what the other choice would be, right? She says you've been down there, you know, you don't want to go down there, right? And he seems to agree with her. Well, that tells us that everyone in the car knows that that's not a real choice, right? Now add to that the fact that he has a gun pointed at his head. He doesn't have a lot of choice in this moment. Which again is interesting because these guys, we learn, are the good guys. They're gonna help him out. They're gonna give him choice. They're gonna free him, right? How do you free somebody? By taking all their choice away. Right?
I think that's the irony of the whole movie.
For sure. But again, what we're interested in is not just that it's ironic. I mean, that's fun and that's interesting. But at this point, what might we be saying about how authority works, or how, I mean, choice is associated, but how any of that works, how we consider it, right? Is it possible to truly be like capital F free, you know? I think the movie's got ideas about it, but when you get into some of these scenes, it's like, man, there's not a lot of agency. And I think that's really, when we say free, we mean agency. We mean the ability to choose for yourself. There's not a lot of that. Good. Anything else you guys noticed in this scene? There's a couple things that I mean, obviously I'm going to point out, but I was curious if you guys noticed anything. Yeah?
What he says about the end after the thing comes out, that thing's real.
That thing's real. I love that too because that harkens back to he wakes up to the phone, right? And he's like, oh, okay, that was just a nightmare. And now he's like, oh, my life is a nightmare.
Well, I think it's interesting because nothing in the Matrix is truly real.
It's a dream, Morpheus calls it.
Yeah.
Morpheus, by the way, the god of dreams.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
highlight the fact that, you know, you always see these shots, especially after he leaves the Matrix, of like their computer screens, it's always like code
Yeah.
falling down the back panel windows of the car that they're in. It looks exactly like the code falling down. on
It's
the
interesting.
screen. Maybe it suggests, you know, everything around them is nothing but code.
I was going to ask about all the rain. Like, there's too much.
Mhm.
It's too much. I'm not sure what to do with it. That's one, but only for when it's on the window, right? The rest, I don't know. This might be a stretch, right? Because it's one very, very specific element of one scene. It feels a lot like a film noir, which is like early 20th century detective movies. There's a lot of rain. People always smoked. Detective would get a job from like a hot lady, and then you find out she double-crossed him somehow, but she still liked him. And film noir. I don't know if that's what it is or not.
Yeah.
There's a lot of rain. I don't know what to do with everything. I just want to point that out to you. It's weird. But that's one for when it's on the window. That's interesting. I like that. Anything else you guys noticed?
Females have authority. They have more.
They do. Well, here's what's interesting. So, Trinity, I feel like this is the first scene where she really plays the role of like good cop, right? Switch is an asshole. Like, because I've watched the scene several times now. He gets in the car. She says, "Take off your shirt," and he goes, "Huh?" And she goes, "Stop the car." It's like, bitch, you just, what's your name? You know, hi, take off your shirt. Like, anyone would go, what? Anyone would. And she's like, "I said, take off your shirt." It's bananas. But it's interesting here for a couple reasons. Number one, yeah, the women are the authority figures here. Trinity, though, seems like she plays more of that, again, starting in this scene, but then in a lot of scenes later. She's always the one explaining things to Neo. She's always the one kind of holding his hand through all this.
More of a nurturer.
Exactly. More maternal. Switch, who, as I said to Daniel, and he's gone now, which is a bummer. There's a whole argument in this film that like it's an allegory for being trans, and that's like certainly applicable to a point, but I have a really big reason why I think that's kind of a garbage argument. We can talk about it later if you want. But Switch is absolutely a trans character. She's a woman, but she's got pretty interesting hair. And if you pay attention to how she dresses, we just said they all dress the same. Switch doesn't.
She wears white, right?
She wears white. And she also, like, pay attention to how she dresses in the next scene. She on the one hand announces her femininity, I would argue, with how she dresses, while at the same time downplaying it. That's the best way I know how to describe it for you. It's really interesting. Plus, her name is Switch, which feels pretty intentional.
Well, everyone's name represents something, right?
I don't know what to do with APOC. Is that like Apocalypse?
I guess so.
I don't know what to do with him. But yeah, but Switch, super intentional, I think. But she's the one in a position of power here, right? And it's just interesting because she is a woman, but also the film is trying to tell you, well, like, is she? Type of thing. All right. I really want to get to the next scene. Though. What time is it? I'm sorry.
4:25.
Woo! All right, we got to meet Morpheus. All right. There's a lot here. So much so, I'm worried we won't have time to get to all of it, but we'll see what we can do. We've already been talking, there's been a theme to today, so we can talk about this first. The pills. What about that? Choose, he says. What's up? Feels like that, and he says this is your last chance. So he kind of ups the stakes for him. He tells him, you got to make this choice right now. Definition of an ultimatum for sure. Do you feel like Neo could realistically choose the blue pill?
It makes every moment of his life up to that point a waste. Because he's been so
Yeah.
searching for it.
Yeah. He has definitely put in the time and the effort. It would be a weird decision. Terrible movie, too. Okay, cool. So here, again, we have Morpheus saying, I'm going to free you. The world has been pulled over your eyes. Like all that language, like great lines he has. Great metaphorical language he has. And he ends all of that with, take the red pill, you fuck. Basically. Right? And that smile, I'm not trying to hate on Lawrence Fishburne. Like, creepy smile, though.
Well, I was actually, this scene made me think about what you said about the sunglasses.
Yeah!
And as soon as he sees Neo, he talks about how your eyes give away the fact that you've accepted something.
He's reading him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So So maybe that's why they wear the uniform and the sunglasses.
So you
It
can't.
covers their eyes. It keeps their identity. Maybe not their identity, but it keeps them a secret.
Yeah. Well, you could make the case potentially that one of the ways they hide in the Matrix is by obfuscating their individuality.
Yeah.
Like they're so individual because they're outside the Matrix that they understand when they go back in, they have to hide that fact. Maybe. There's also something throughout the movie with mirrors. So like, not just that Morpheus is wearing sunglasses in this scene in a very dark room during a storm, but Neo is mirrored in them. And then in the very next scene, which we don't have time to watch today, he's gonna swallow a mirror, for God's sake. There's definitely something being done with reflection and representation. And I have thoughts on it, but I don't know if that's something else I want you thinking about when we get back to this, when we come back together. It's throughout the movie. Okay, cool. Anything else you guys noticed? Anything at all? Sure.
I found it interesting when he's talking about choice. He mentions your job, when you go to church, when you go to pay your taxes, all are authority figures.
And church and state.
Yeah.
Yeah. Seems pretty intentional again, right? Almost like we're saying, the Matrix in the movie is robots sucking up all your energy, but there's systems in the world that you guys live in, that I live into, that tell you when and where to be, maybe sap your energy as a result of that. Why do I have this job? Let me think about this for a second. A teacher of mine once said, I would teach for free, you pay me to grade. That's pretty accurate. I would show up, especially if all my classes are like this one, and they're not. But if they were, I would talk about like cool ideas you guys have about movies and stuff. I'd do that all day. That's fine. Grading your papers, somebody's fucking have to pay me. That's awful. I hate doing that. Where's my money? And it's like, well, what do I do with that money that represents my time? Well, I pay my taxes. I go and do things. And I got a lot of places to be, as it turns out. How much freedom do I have? How much control over me do I have? Not a lot.
Well, that goes back to what Neo said too. He says, I don't like the idea of not being in control of my life. And he's asking about faith.
That's a whole other can of worms. What time is it? Hold on.
4:34.
Shit. All right, let's try this.
4:35 now.
Don't give us a countdown. So we've been talking about free will, choice, authority, and the movie has just made a pretty clear link between the kind of authority that is the Matrix, which is the system that undergirds everything, right, controls everything, and it's just said church and state; those are other systems that tell you how to be and when to be it, just like the Matrix. The movie says, which is actually pretty accurate, unfortunately. But on top of all that, Morpheus brings in this fate business. That's how Neo says that line. He says, do you believe in fate? And he says, no, because I like to think I have control over my own life. If you believe in fate, or if you believe in destiny, or a plan, or whatever, the logic of that is free will doesn't exist, right? If destiny is real, what I'm saying right now was always going to be, right? If one of you decides to get up and leave early because you're sick of this shit, that's not you, that was your destiny, right? It's another system, it's another school of thought, and on the one hand, again, they're trying to say that's what the Matrix is, right? They've destined you to live your life how you've lived it thus far, right? But think about how destiny works in the movie. They keep talking about this one, right? It's a prophecy. And then they go to a damn oracle who communicates in prophecy. If prophecy is possible, and the movie seems to say that it is, now we're talking about fate.
Well, I think that's the irony of what he says there. Is that
Yeah.
Everything we've seen up to this moment makes it seem like Neo has no control over his life.
Yeah.
He's constantly handed these decisions where it's really not a decision.
Yeah. But if fate is a guiding force in the cosmos, which it seems like the movie suggests outside of the Matrix it is, as well as with inside, then free will is an illusion altogether. Nothing Morpheus does, nothing Neo does, nothing the agents do, nothing. None of it is free will. No matter what you tell yourself or how anarchic you can be, what systems you can break down or break out of, free will doesn't exist. I'm not sure what to do with that. Because it does seem like the movie supports the idea that destiny is a thing. It's worth thinking about. The reason I said shit earlier is because I was fated to. No, because I knew we wouldn't have time to solve that today. But all this prophecy business is pretty weird when we start thinking about free will. Because they can't coexist, I don't think.
It would make no sense if they did coexist.
Yeah, I mean, like, considering the definition, like, it just doesn't work. There was something else I wanted to bring to your attention. Oh! Ooh, we don't have time for that. What time is it? I know, I'm sorry.
4:38.
Okay. The last big idea I want to put at your feet before I let you go for like a week and a half. There's another theme in this movie that we haven't talked about much at all. It's kind of attached to this conversation around authority, but it's different enough that it warrants mentioning here. Morpheus, this scene is a really good spot to pick. How he talks to Neo when he describes the Matrix. I'm going to try to, God help me, back up a little bit. We're at 29:52, so... Alright, that's enough. He goes into more detail. What does Neo know? He knows that the Matrix is a thing. How does he know it? Based on what? He just said it. Morpheus did.
Does he feel it?
A feeling. You know it, but you can't explain it. It's a feeling that you have. You don't know what it is, but it's there. You don't have knowledge. You have a feeling that something is wrong with the world. And so you've spent, I guess, X amount of years trying to solve what that is, trying to find it. And it's got something to do with authority. You're sure of it. This is how conspiracy theories get started. Where's your evidence? Well, I don't have evidence. I just feel it. And I'm going to go find evidence now to like fit my feeling, fit my worldview. There's absolutely something here. Here in a minute, he says, we don't have time, but he says, no one, like basically I can't explain the Matrix to you, I have to show you, right? You have to see it for yourself. The only knowledge that's valuable to someone who works in this mode is experience. Received knowledge is no good because you can't trust somebody else. You can't trust an expert. So me telling you this right now, a person in this mindset working by this logic would say, oh, his fucking degrees, he's part of the system, get him out of here. I have to learn this I have to find this out for myself. There's no other way to do it. Everyone else can trick you or lie to you or be misinformed. This is how people that believe in anarchy think. This is also how people that think the moon landing was fake think. Go ahead.
What about people who think the president is a lizard man?
They think that way too, yeah. Because any evidence you would have to the contrary, well, they couldn't believe, like they feel that he's a lizard man. And you can't disprove a feeling because it's what people feel.
So you think the moon landing was real?
Yeah.
They said they cannot recreate the technology we call it.
God, you're gonna break my heart right before spring break.
They landed on the moon.
All right, we'll just. That's not the conversation I was trying to have.
Technology is 1,000 times better. How can you not recreate?
We have a supercomputer
No.
in all of our pockets.
Let's calm
We can
down.
get to the moon.
That's not. Look, we're not. But this is what I'm getting at. But we're not gonna have that conversation. All right, Jesus Christ. I guess it's a good note to end on. Next time. A little frazzled by all that, to be honest with you. Oh yeah, that's funny thing about the movie. I tried to, like I said, I tried to give you guys a pretty good inventory, try to raise some themes, some questions for you. I'm not telling you got to rewatch the movie necessarily, although it would be the worst idea. I know it's kind of long. I know that.
Watch all of it.
Huh?
Watch all of it.
Well, no. But we're going to sit down next week and actually talk about the paper and actually talk about how we might write it. Well, you know what I mean by next week. But the movie will have left your mind by then. So to the best of your ability, try to not let that happen. Whatever you think you can do to make that happen. All right. Thank you guys. Be safe for the break. I'll see you later.